Carlos Lachlan is working to flip one player committed to Alabama, and Tavien St. Clair is working to flip another.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to a feel-good Friday edition of Locked On Buckeyes, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, here on Friday, August 30th in the year 2024. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast, and today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. 5 Hour Energy fixes tired fast with zero sugar and a convenient portable size. It's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. Go to 5hourenergy.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. During today's show, Locked On's recruiting analyst Brian Smith is back with us once again to dive into Ohio State's attempt to flip Alabama commit Micah Debose. Also dive into Phillip Bell if he'll pick Ohio State or USC. And we wrap up the show talking about Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs. A lot of good stuff in this show. Brian knows Jeremiah, so I can't wait to get to that part of the show to hear what he has to say about the talented Buckeye freshman. And as we welcome in Brian Smith, I'd like to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On College Network. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. Brian, we are right around the corner, like on the eve of Ohio State taking the field for the first time in 2024. And the recruiting cycle, it doesn't stop. There are guys that are currently committed to Ohio State that are looking forward to watching Ohio State play this weekend, but are also working hard recruiting for Ohio State to stockpile the Buckeyes 2025 recruiting class. We talked about recently one guy that's an Alabama commit that Ohio State's going after. Micah Debose is one that's an Alabama commit that Tavien St. Clair, who's a Buckeyes commit right now, is trying to pull from Tuscaloosa to have him play at Ohio State next year. What are your thoughts about this going on?
It's a new era. Apparently, Ohio State recruits its own state, and they recruit the state of Alabama because they've already got two kids committed, and Micah would be number 3. And he's from a really fertile area in Mobile per capita. Okay. It's one of the best places in the United States. I've seen him play several times. That is a massive young man, and he's a guy that would fit in pretty early, I'd imagine, on their depth chart from a physical standpoint. It's just up to him to learn the playbook. He's 330, something like that, and he's a plow. Like, that is a downhill power guy. He might be able to play tackle in time at the college level. He's very athletic, just got to reshape his body. But he had offers from LSU, Bama, Auburn, Georgia. You know, like when you have those offers in like is your sophomore year, you're a guy. That kind of says it all. And on top of that, again, he's playing in Mobile against real competition. So I know he can play. I've seen him in person as well. So that would help solve some of the issues you and I have talked about prior on this show. Like, O-line recruiting is iffy at Ohio State by their standards.
Yeah.
It certainly doesn't match what they're doing at DB and receiver.
No, it doesn't match. I like that a guy that's the best quarterback in the class by some say the best player in the class, is actively pursuing somebody at one of the best schools in the country that's currently committed there. He's not going at a kid that's maybe an FCS level saying, hey, man, you could be a 2 or 3 year project. Let's come on over here. Let's get some more talent at Ohio State. No, he's going after one of the better guys at the position, but also 2, a position of need. And maybe this is what Ohio State needs for the O-line recruiting, is not just use the coaches, but to use the players that are in the recruiting class to go out and get other players at that position. Because unfortunately, we don't know why the coaches aren't able to get these guys that are outside of Ohio consistently, the upper tier guys. St. Clair might be able to do it. And if he does, that does boost a needed area in the Buckeyes recruiting.
It's something that's been going on for a while. Certain guys have better personalities for it. I don't know Tavien, but he's obviously very gifted.
Yeah.
And his name is synonymous in recruiting. If he sends you a text, I'm sure you're going to reply to it.
Right.
So I'd imagine that's probably going to help Ohio State. To backtrack a little, they were in on him early.
Okay.
Back LSU, Auburn, and the Ohio State Buckeyes were his top 3 at one point. He was prior to that committed to Georgia. Now his list has changed a lot. So he's a guy you can flip. He's not dead set, in my opinion, until he signs. So getting Tavien might be the difference to getting him back on campus. That's the next thing you need to look at before you even ask.
Right.
When does he come to Columbus?
Right.
He could still technically flip without coming, but what are the odds of that compared to like going to an Ohio State game against, I don't know, Minnesota or whoever it is?
Correct.
It's different. So that's the next objective for the staff and apparently for Tavien too.
You know, we were talking about boosting the Buckeyes recruiting class at the offensive line. Well, between the last time Brian and I talked and this time, the Buckeyes got a massive, massive boost when Tavien McFadden committed to Ohio State. You said something to me. I said he's probably going to commit to the Buckeyes. He did that the next day. And before that, there was only 2 guys. You said at minimum you need 3. Buckeyes are working on 4 now. But I think McFadden is one of those guys that was needed, and you got to. Ohio State must have been rejoicing when they said, "Oh, our hard work is paying off."
That's part of the process. Some guys just don't pop really early. Some guys don't even pop during the summer.
Right.
You got to make it happen whenever they want to come. So, recruiting's the long haul. It's about the relationship building. You know, Ohio State's done a nice job this year. You look at their class. They got Tavien. They got lucky to have a quarterback as good as him.
Right.
In state. That's
right.
Certainly a bonus, but kids from Alabama, kids from Florida, kids from Texas, kids from California, all visiting. They got kids from Georgia on the map. You know, this is a different deal. They're as national as it gets. It takes a lot of work, a lot of orchestration to get that together. So I'm impressed with it. We can still go back to the O-line thing overall. I don't understand that. I know you don't either.
No.
But I think their method is good. And by all means, I think Ryan Day is a pretty good individual recruiter from speaking to people when I'm asking about it. So, I mean, they're headed in the right direction across the board, and this kid's just another example. They've been consistent. Sometimes that's what it takes.
You called Micah a plow. You called him a downhill power guy. What other things would you say to describe how he plays?
For his size, he runs well in space. Not many guys really, as offensive linemen, enjoy the screen game because that's just more running for big guys.
Yeah.
But he's capable of doing that. He's proven it. I've seen him run in space doing drills at the Under Armour camp. I think he's a guy that once he figures it out, like, okay, I'm going to be right tackle, left guard, whatever, and he hones his skills. You can't teach the strength. He is naturally powerful in a way you can't really explain. Like, he launches kids. He has the ability to kick kids off their feet. Technique has a mile to go, but he's got a red shirt next year wherever he goes, probably anyway. After 1 year in Columbus or wherever he goes, I bet he competes for playing time, though, because the talent's there. So as long as he adheres to that and he takes the coaching, Micah Debose can be a big-time college football player.
There's a guy out in Cali that people believe can be a big-time college football player down the road, and Phillip Bell. He is on the eve himself of announcing where he's going to play college football. He's deciding between USC and Ohio State. We'll talk about his recruitment next. This episode is brought to you by Factor. Fuel up with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. Make today the day you kickstart a new healthy routine. With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you'll always have new flavors to explore. Make your day delicious from breakfast to dessert. Stay fueled with easy, nutritious options. Enjoy effortless support for your lifestyle. Choose from 6 menu preferences to help you manage calories, maximize protein intake, avoid meat, or simply eat well balanced. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. This episode is also brought to you by eBay Motors, passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. College football is back, and it's not too late to catch up before the season kicks off. SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12, you can get it all from Locked On stable of college experts by subscribing to the Locked On College Football Podcast. Who has a chance to make the playoff? What teams will cause chaos in their new conferences? Everything you need to know all in one place. Be sure to follow and subscribe to the Locked On College Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Brian, I think we talked about him within the last month. I forget. I'm not really sure, but I remember Phillip Bell. I remember Mission Viejo High School being something we talked about here on the show. And it was just more, hey, this Bell kid, he's good. He's committing soon. What can we learn about him? But now it's down to the Buckeyes and the Trojans. The in-state kid, will he go to USC or will he go to Ohio State? Brian Harlan has a great track record. But if I'm a wide receiver and I see what Lincoln Riley does with quarterbacks, Brian, it wouldn't shock me if he stayed and played for USC.
That makes sense. The only thing about that, I read something a little bit ago that he's supposed to announce his decision around the same time that Ohio State's playing.
Oh, okay. Done deal.
I mean, it could be a coincidence.
Yeah.
I'll go with Ohio State on that. I'll read the tea leaves how I see fit. But he plays at a program that's been dominant for decades. He's a little more solid in terms of his fundamentals than most kids, and being conservative. He's pretty well coached.
Yeah.
Mission Viejo has always had good coaching, and he's a guy that kind of fits what they do. He's a route runner. I think I'm not saying he's Chris Olave because he was about as good a freshman route runner as I've seen.
Right.
But it is ironic they're both in California. So, look, this is a guy that's a little underrated, especially being from Mission Viejo. It's on the south edge of LA for those that were wondering.
Okay.
Why he's not ranked higher, I'm surprised. I went and watched some of his senior film. He's played in a couple games so far. I'm like, he's just naturally gifted at beating guys with his footwork. If you do that and you have the hands that he does, well, then what are we looking at? Because he can definitely run. That's not in question either.
No.
So fade balls inside, you can run screens, doesn't matter what it is. His route tree is much more advanced than most guys. Would not be surprised if he pushed for playing time by his sophomore year in Ohio State.
So you mentioned something with him beating guys with his feet. And I went back and tried to just refresh my memory on him as a route runner. I saw the same thing. And it wasn't something I saw first clip or second clip. I went back to the beginning because I noticed these guys, it's not even bump and run. It's with his feet. He's beating off the line of scrimmage, getting over top of the corner or the DB, and they can't catch up. So I went back earlier in that same little huddle clip film that I was watching. Every single time, doesn't matter what team he's going up against, he's beating you off the line of scrimmage. And if you're doing that in high school, you're going to make big plays if you're a good route runner like he is, if you have the hands he has. But also, that stuff is kind of hard to teach. That, I think, is one thing that might translate to the next level. Of course, you got to refine it and you got to improve upon it. But he already has a good foundation to build upon as far as his footwork and beating guys at the snap of the ball.
That first step in football, whether you're a D lineman, a receiver, or anywhere in between, is paramount. He maximizes his. He doesn't take false steps like other kids do, at least not as many. And he makes sudden cuts with explosiveness when he changes direction. If you add those combinations together, it's going to work out for you. I mean, you really got to try hard to fail at that point. And his stop and go speed, like he ran a go ball and scored, but then it was a little later, he ran a fade ball and he got the guy on skates. Once they start rock, it's over. It's over. And He also plays with Luke Fahey, a kid who's a Ohio State fan, by the way, but 2026 quarterback that's a big-time player. So that helps too. But that offense is nasty, and he's going to be more prepared for an Ohio State or USC because he's not going to be just like a learning from scratch. There are a lot of kids come to college at receiver, like even as good as Hartline and Ohio State are, it's going to take a while.
Right.
That's not going to be the case with Phillip Bell.
Does Mission Viejo play a national schedule like IMG? I'm not really familiar with the school.
Their first game was in Hawaii.
Oh, well, okay.
Yeah, that's a program, the Diablos, I believe is their nickname. They've had kids. Like, that's a program that Pete Carroll ardently recruited when he was at SC.
Okay.
I mean, every year they got somebody. And they got 2 juniors that are national recruits, and they got this kid, and they might have some other guys on defense. I don't know. I haven't followed their defense, but they're going to have a Power 4 kid every year.
That's really impressive. That's really impressive out there. And I think when you mentioned Olave earlier, Ryan Day already has somewhat of an understanding about what kind of kids that might be under the radar in California that might be able to play at Ohio State. So it doesn't shock me that when you mentioned his route running being a little bit more advanced and you mentioned Olave was not really on Ohio State's radar at the time. I think Ohio State went out there to look at him. They saw Olave. Ryan Day went hard after him. He ended up committing to Ohio State. The rest is history. Bell, I'm not saying he's going to be Olave, but if you have that route running along with the footwork, he's fun to watch. I don't normally get into watching guys. I'm like, man, you're just that much fun to watch. But Bell is that kind of guy. I wonder if Ryan Day can continue, just like we talk about him in Alabama, if Ryan Day can continue making somewhat of a mark in California, getting 1 guy or 2 guys a year. It
changes everything. You're not trying to really be anything unique if you're Ohio State because you're unique naturally. Like, you don't have to go outside. They can get a kid from anywhere at any time. The kid we're going to talk about here in a little bit is from South Florida. We talk about Olave from California. St. Clair's from Ohio. They get kids from everywhere, and it's every year. But specifically, California kids, a lot of the programs out there, they're pretty advanced with some of their technical stuff, like Olave obviously was.
Yes.
He's one of my favorite freshman receivers I've ever seen. If you can just add 1 more guy a year out there, that might be the difference between beating Michigan or going home with an L. Those games are close. You're recruiting those kids for the Michigan game, for the Big Ten title game, for playoff games. You're trying to win those extra battles. Like, they didn't get Jeremiah Smith and he went to Miami. Would they be where they are in the rankings right now?
No.
I mean, it's rare freshmen like him, but he's about as rare as it gets. There's no doubt in my mind that he's changed the polls, and I think he'll continue to do so. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for that extra edge out there. In California, now that they got their 2 main schools in LA that are in the Big Ten, it's even easier, I would think, because mom and dad's going to see their kids a little bit more if they leave. So Ohio State has to hit that. They got to hit it every chance they can.
They also will potentially need to capitalize on Aiden Harris, a young man, a defensive lineman, I believe, from North Carolina, who there's rumors that he's considering taking a trip to Ohio State to watch Ohio State's first game tomorrow. We've talked about a lot of defensive linemen, haven't really dabbled much in the 2026 kids. I don't really know where he falls as far as like national ranking, top 50, top 20. I don't know. I don't care. Brian, this guy can ball.
He's a big kid, and he's got a really good first step. He kind of fits what Larry Johnson wants. They run a 1-gap scheme. This kid's at up the field 3 tech. He's not filled out completely yet. He's got 2 years of high school.
Right.
He's class of 26, but he makes plays in the backfield. If you take the coaching and you have his frame and you have his explosiveness, ceiling is where you want it to be. He's playing just outside of Charlotte at Weddington High. It's one of the more prominent programs in the greater state of North Carolina. And you can tell they've got some other guys too watching his film, but he's the one that kind of stands out once the ball snapped. Again, he's playing for a pretty good football team, so that's important. I'd imagine that he's going to be a little more advanced, a little more ready for the big time, whether it's Carolina, Georgia, Ohio State, whatever it ends up being. But he'll have the 40 offers. This is an elite player. He's a national top 50 by one of the services I saw. Elite football player, and it's just scratching the surface. He still uses basic swim moves and stuff like that, plays a little high sometimes. That's all things that'll get cleared up once he reaches the college level, if not before.
What are some things, if anything, that you've heard while talking to people about Harris at this point in his recruitment?
I haven't spoken to anybody at his high school or anything. I just know about him and I've seen his film.
Okay.
And just watching the offer list kind of tells me what I need to know.
Yeah.
That's the solidification that, okay, here are the offers in the film. Like sometimes they don't match. You're confused. This one is different. Ohio State being after him, etc. That's a good sign. The only thing I know now is that I think this past spring kind of changed the defensive tackle recruiting board for everybody. You remember back, you and I talked about this, like $500K for a guy out of the portal.
Right.
A D tackle. And we're not talking about like number one guy. Like number one guy's pushing $1 million. It's
correct.
It's ridiculous. And by the way, as a note, I don't know if you saw this. There's several people have an article. I got it pulled up one of my tabs. I haven't got to it yet. The AP put out an article. The NCAA is voting on getting rid of the spring window. If they do that, which I think would be good because it'd be less issues. The NCAA is trying to get rid of possible litigation against them. I can tell you why they're doing it. But at the same time, that's going to put more pressure on signing the high school kids because you got to get them right after the season. And some of these coaches, they got like Big Ten championship game, etc. Man, that is going to make it a hectic December. That's going to be buck wild. You got one-stop shopping. And if you decide to transfer in the spring, you can, but I don't think you're going to be eligible for the fall. Like if they put this rule in, and they're talking about doing it immediately. So kids like this and every year with the D tackles, because that's a premium spot, more emphasis on it and recruit if there could possibly be more. It's really important.
Let's stick with that thought after the break because I have a little thought about that, about the possible change in the portal, because I don't think Ryan Day is really going to enjoy his December if that goes into effect. This episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Tired after lunch? You're not alone. In fact, research shows that more than 70% of us hit the wall after lunch. Let a 5 Hour Energy shot help you leap over that wall instead of crashing into it. With zero sugar and the convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5 Hour Energy website has flavors galore, like watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and more. There's a flavor for everyone. On this side, you even have the option to build your own 12-pack or 24-pack. You choose the flavors, and it is delivered right to your door. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5 Hour Energy product today, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. This episode is brought to you by Billiards Plus. Billiards Plus has the best selection of pool tables, game tables, shuffleboard tables, and more. And the best service is Central Ohio. Everything you need for in-home and even backyard entertainment is at Billiards Plus. They are family owned and operated. And when you talk to the staff at Billiards Plus, you know you're talking to an expert who won't steer you wrong. No matter the season, Billiards Plus has you covered for all your indoor and outdoor entertainment needs. Kenny, Sarah, and the whole staff will always go above and beyond to give you the best customer service in the industry. Billiards Plus. Visit their showroom on Dublin Center Drive in Dublin. So, Brian, with that spring portal window, I've heard about it, I've read about it, I've thought about it. The one thought that I have right now, let's just say it's an Ohio State show. Ryan Day right now, current landscape makeup of it, probably going to play in the Big Ten Championship. That game's the first Saturday in December, so December 6th or 7th this year. And then realistically, you're preparing to play in a playoff game, either a first-round game or that you get a bye and you're playing in the second-round game of the playoff. National Signing Day, the early one's in December 13th or 12th or somewhere in that window.
December 4th.
December,
I moved it up.
Before the championship game?
The week of.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I don't know the normal dates of it. That just adds to it.
That's why I looked it up, because I heard they were moving. I'm like, I wonder if and they did. Like the Wednesday before is signing day.
So you're preparing for a conference championship game.
100%.
You're playing in the game potentially if you're Ohio State. And then the portal opens up and you're like, wait, I'm still playing. Like my guys are still on our team.
There's no way the elite teams can do the same. And I think that's one of the reasons they're doing this. They're trying to level the playing field. They will never admit that, but they're trying to make it more level because all these, that's what it is. And they're also, again, I'll get into the litigation thing at a later time, but that's what the spring window is about.
It's so weird because then, a step further, if Ohio State does what they plan on doing this year, they're playing in the national championship, and that's after the portal closes. So I'm like, if I'm Ryan Day, y'all ruining my December, y'all ruining my January, and then in the spring, my wife was like, what's wrong with you? Why are you home? Well, because we can't go out and see guys in the portal because the portal, like, it's so much stuff going on right now, and I'm being sarcastic about the family stuff because I don't want to talk about their home life because I don't know what it's like. That dynamic, though, man, it makes it being a head coach is already hard enough, and we talk about the changes to the sport, how it's harder. It's just going to make it a whole lot harder if they actually make this happen.
The only thing is, I know that a lot of schools are moaning regarding, hey, I'm sure you saw the Chuck Martin thing from Miami of Ohio. If you haven't, for the people that haven't, and Chuck Martin is one of the most blunt individuals on planet Earth. Alabama flat stole his kicker, and he got interviewed by a local guy on air. And this guy was a pretty conservative guy. And he's like, oh gosh, like he was just out of sorts. And he went on and on, Chuck did, about Alabama just flat stealing his kicker for this season. A lot of schools are cheating. And I'm not going to point any fingers, but probably somebody at every school is doing something or boosting. I mean, it's one way to get rid of it is to close the window. You can't cheat if they can't transfer.
Correct.
So that's my guess. And the NCAA is just tired of dealing with it. It's more manpower they get to keep. It's less chance for litigation against them about schools moaning. It's one less. They got to have one open now, and they're going to do it then so you can at least get the kids in for spring ball. I get that part. That's why it's the December window. The coaches want them in spring ball. I would too. But if the problem is now, like, give you an example, I cover Auburn. If it wasn't for the spring window, Auburn would be hosed. They went out and got not one, but three guys like up front defensive line after spring. Their roster would be totally different. They'd be a 6-6 football team. They're going to probably win 8 games, I think, this year. They got a couple guys who got a chance to play in the NFL. You miss it all in the winter window.
Yeah.
It is what it is. And a lot of these fans are big boosters. When they see their buddies' team get it and they got to go to the office, them checks don't get written. So it's going to be an interesting offseason.
It will be an interesting offseason. It was for Ohio State this year. They're playing their first game in 2024 tomorrow, and all eyes will be on number 4 on offense, Jeremiah Smith, someone that Brian knows personally. And I figured, since Brian and I have talked a little bit about freshmen leading into this season, why not just revisit Jeremiah Smith again and hear what Brian has to say about Jeremiah Smith starting his career at Ohio State? The floor is yours.
Well, here's the deal with Jeremiah. From all the years that I've scouted kids and watched film, and I even told Jeremiah this to his face. He's a quiet kid and really nice guy. Said there's only one guy that I will rank ahead of you as a receiver that I've seen. I didn't get to see him play live because he was in the middle of nowhere. And that's Randy Moss in West Virginia. Ironically, Randy's brother, for those who don't know, went to Ohio State. But outside of Randy, he's the best receiver I've ever seen live, and it's for the following reason. The physical things are obvious. It's the way that Jeremiah prepares. Rod Mack, who played at Miami and played in the NFL, and he's got the Miami Ravens football team. It's a bunch of youth kids. They win national titles. He had Jeremiah and that whole crew all the way up when they're like 9. He told Jeremiah, you were going to be the number 1 player in the nation when he was 9 years old. And I said, why did you tell like a 9-year-old? And he said, it's because his attitude was different than any kid I've ever been around. Jeremiah was the smallest of the group till about right before his sophomore year. And all of a sudden, Jeremiah got taller than everybody. He was the shortest and the tallest. And then they're like, uh-oh. He went from the slot receiver to the boundary receiver in like 8 months. And then his hands, his work ethic, his speed and all that kind of came in to full focus. And I've seen him at 7-on events, high school games, underarm. It doesn't matter what event it is. He does his thing. Myself or anybody else could be 3 feet from him. He does not see anything else. This is my routine. It's kind of like Cooper Kupp or somebody like that.
Yeah.
They've got a routine, but he's doing that at like 16 years old when I was seeing him as an underclassman. And then again, he's got God's gifts that you cannot teach. You combine the overall skill set, and he's been trained on everything in terms of like beating press coverage and all that. So, and by the way, he ran over 23 miles an hour the other day at Ohio State. I don't know if you saw that. The last thing Jeremiah told me he was 210, and that was last year. I don't know what he weighs now, but it's not relevant. He's bigger than any DB he's going to go against. So here's my projection before you even ask. 50 catches, 800 yards, and 10 touchdowns this year. They'll be balanced. And for some schools, he would be like an 80, 1,200 guy as a freshman because they'd force feed him the ball. I don't think they'll have to do that at Ohio State. And the boundary receiver is probably where he'll play some. I imagine they'll move him around because he's very smart. They may take him away in some capacity if they put him to the field. Or there'll be a few games he doesn't get as many, but Ohio State's offense is set up for that. There were games Olave didn't go off too, but he's playing in the NFL too. You got to go to the guy that has the best matchup, and Ohio State's got too many guys to worry about it. But 50, 810, that's my prediction. And I think towards the end of this regular season, he'll be the best player in the Big Ten. That's what I think. The light will go on, for lack of a better phrase.
At the end of the year, you're basically saying at Ohio State, it's going to be him and Caleb Downs as being the best players on the team and also in the conference. We can't forget Downs either. Like, I know I mentioned Jeremiah Smith in the spreadsheet. A lot of Ohio State fans have focused more on Jeremiah Smith. I mean, offense is easy. They haven't really talked much about Caleb Downs or thought about him because Jeremiah Smith is all over social media as he's going to be. But if Caleb Downs on a defense and Jeremiah Smith on offense, if they're two of the best in the Big Ten, that's not a bad combination, not a bad deal to have in Columbus.
I went to see Caleb practice one time, and I talked to him a little bit at the beginning when they were warming up. They're going through some really interesting DB drills on how to track the ball and tackle and everything. After a few rounds, he's coaching other kids, and like the coach for the drill just kind of like, just let him do what he did. And I'm like, okay. He played at Mill Creek, and they won state that year, like in big boy competition outside Atlanta. It's elite. And I'm like, this kid's mentality is just different. Then he goes to Alabama as a freshman and leads Bama in tackles.
Right.
You know, and I saw him in the Iron Bowl. I was at the Iron Bowl in the field. I'm like, he's calling this stuff out. Nick's defense is not friendly to learn at all. And he's already doing it. So he's the kind of guy that could be a corporate CEO one day. He just happens to be really good at safety. So, and he could probably play corner if you wanted him to. He's just really good at his craft. Ohio State's in a good spot there too. So if they have busted coverages this year, I'll be very surprised. He'll get things organized.
What are your last thoughts? The final show we have together before Ohio State starts the 2024 season. What's your final thoughts about the Buckeyes this year?
If they're going to win a national title, the quarterback has to exceed the expectations for yourself and myself. Everything else is there to win it. And I hate being that guy. I think he's really good. I just don't think he's going to beat Georgia. I think everything else is in line. They'll go 11-1 or 12-0. What do you think? Oregon be my guess in the Big Ten title game? I think they'll lose to Oregon in the regular season, beat them in the Big Ten title game.
Same. I'm with you.
That's where I'm at. It could be either way. It could be either way. But bottom line, Ohio State's going to get a pretty high seed. I just don't think anybody's beating Georgia. And I think Ohio State fans some of them will make fools of themselves when they complain to Ryan Day for going like 14-2 or something.
Yeah.
That's just what they do.
I appreciate Brian coming on the show once again. And guys, even though the season's starting tomorrow, that does not mean Brian's going anywhere. We're still going to try our best to get Brian every single week, probably still on Friday and our normal slots. Brian and I record on Thursdays. It hits on Fridays. And we're still going to do our normal final show before the week. So you're probably going to get 2 shows in your feed every single Friday before a game this year, just trying to provide more content for you to enjoy. And as Ohio State fans, we want to keep it good, we want to keep it great, and keep getting better. And Brian's helping us do that with the recruiting stuff he's providing too. You can follow Brian on Twitter at FBScout_Florida. Follow me on the same platform at JStevens07. We're out here on a Friday, Buckeye fans. We'll see you next time.